Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. Today, I'm joined by Tereza Roux. Tereza, you're very welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. Let's begin by asking you to maybe introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what you're involved in today. So over to you, Tereza.
Thank you, Simon. It's such a pleasure. Congratulations on all of your previous successes. And I am just thrilled and pleased to be a part of this, which it will be a phenomenal success. I am a sommelier by trade. In fact, if I introduce myself, typically within any community or if I'm working with a client, then I always say, my name is Tereza. In my previous life, I was an accountant. Accounting drove me to drink, and drinking drove me to what I do now, which is choose wine for people, do wine and food pairings, promote global wine, local wine, food, and absolute not only enjoyment, but the breaking of bread with each other in social settings so that people can more fully enjoy the lives that they're already living. The world we live in today is not only, as we both know, fast-paced, online so much. The last 3 years have really shown us so much about ourselves. So for me, Virtual Wine Concierge is my business that I created. And as a sommelier by trade, working in properties, relay and chateau properties, it really was what showed my passion for people and connecting. So this actually is just a fantastic connection that you and I have made through the Twitter spaces, through the Discord, through the LinkedIn audio, all of that social audio that we're doing is a bit of a new medium for me because traditionally as a sommelier, I've worked in one particular property, I'm committed there, and I not only know all the customers, know all the people, but normally sommeliers are there for many years. And then when they leave, they go to do other things. I started my company so that I could actually I'm a guest sommelier. So I discovered that as a somm, if you need time off for exams or a friend's wedding or just because you had COVID, then I would step in and guest sommelier. So really, again, it comes down to I love pairing wine, choosing wine, promoting wine for people within their meals, their celebrations, their gifting. And I do that not only in Vancouver, throughout Canada. I'm now expanding with my business to do that globally, which brings me to you.
Well, fantastic. And I'm glad it brings you to me because obviously here on the Global Discussion, you're in the right space. Yes. And it's interesting when you talk about, you started off in the books and the accounting side of things. I know yes. You did a brief spell doing a little bit of work with the Coca-Cola company. But you kind of have been working through this, I suppose, and maybe I'm getting the term wrong here, but you can't just become a sommelier overnight. It takes a little bit of training. You have to sort of do that sort of interim stage. Could you maybe explain that to us? Because you've been doing this now for many years.
I started in the industry over 2 decades ago. And interestingly enough, as you say, it very much a lot of sommeliers, a lot of people in the wine industry, our story typically starts with either a trip or a particular wine that we enjoyed. And that leads us into this, some people enter it by way of that, should I take a course? Or some people enter it by way of the hospitality industry by working in a restaurant. So typically you might find that someone is a server and they get more and more involved, as a manager, and that way or the way that it happened for me, whereby I was in Europe traveling, and North America, the wine industry is a bit different. It was very young at the time. So coming back from Europe, where wine and food pairing, and wine isn't not only every day, wine is part of the culture of each country. And therefore, you do learn about a country's history and geography and geology, and with their forward thinking, where they're going. For example, Napoleon used to saber champagne bottles because, of course, they had their swords. They were military. And so that has come into being for us to saber for a celebration. And for example, if I'm in England, in Kent, they've now, they've become a sparkling wine region because of climate change. And how I came about all of that is I started working in wine retail and going into classes. So to become a certified sommelier, in terms of, it does not only take many years, there are people that I know that have not certified, they've just simply tasted wines around the world, and they've enjoyed it as an aficionado, as we would call it. As a certified sommelier, you start off in WSET. So Wine and Spirit Education Trust is the course, and it's based out of London. So it's a wonderful journey. It starts off with level 1, and you're in this group where it's fun and enjoyable. You learn about basic grapes and regions. And by the time you get to your diploma, you are very involved in understanding soil, understanding climate, understanding each particular, not only wine region and grape, but the very essence, the very ethos of culture and of agriculture, really. So that course, in terms of, you can speed it up, and it would take somewhere between 6 to 8 years to become fully certified and to have your designation, that you can then go on to Master of Wine. And Master of Wine is an entirely separate program, whereby that's what I'm going to the next pinnacle of. And that is at least a 4-year program. And that is very much global.
Very good. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I suppose when I think of sommeliers, obviously I think of nice restaurants, but some of the most engaging experiences with sommeliers have been at private events, functions, entertaining, where a sommelier has been brought in and they've really added a sort of new dimension to proceedings. It really, they bring sort of the provenance, the history. They've maybe met the growers. They've traveled to the country where the wine was produced. And there's something quite magical when you get somebody that's very knowledgeable that they bring to the event. Do you find that a lot?
Yes, I do. In fact, and I love that you not only say that, because it warms my heart. It is very much why I created my company, Virtual Wine Concierge, because the personal touch and again, people either want to celebrate, especially after the last 3 years. We've really rediscovered how important it is for connection. So when there's a private event, when there's a corporate event, and people are all gathering together. For example, my last private event that I had done prior to COVID, which became so memorable, was families celebrating anniversaries. And in one house, they had the champagne and oysters and music and aperitifs. And then the second house was where we hosted a 5-course dinner. And it was phenomenally done by a catering company. The chef of the catering company didn't really want to speak about his food. So I not only took the mic at each course to basically talk about the wine, just give them a little understanding, a little blurb about it, the history, like you say, and why I paired it with the food. I talked about the food a little bit, and that not only gave them a real cohesion, and it bonded them for the course that they were all having. And then I would walk around and I would not only top up wines, but I would talk with people and either answer any questions they had, because that's just it, is quite often discussion leads to more questions. Or some people would want to let me know, they would want to regale a story of a winery they had been to, or their favorite wine, or why this particular wine, it just was the perfect pairing. And the sense of pride that I feel for being the liaison between the winemaker, the winery, the chef, and all the producers that created, is really where I get the most enjoyment, as well as seeing everybody toasting and celebrating anniversaries and being together. Because while this online, we now know is the way of our world, this is normal for us now, this is how we conduct our lives and business, there is nothing that can really equate to in-person celebrating, toasting with each other. So for that, I have resumed not only my online courses and webinars and tastings, but I'm now enjoying being back to contracts that whereby people are asking me to come in and choose the wine and be a part of their celebration. It's such an honor, actually.
I love that. And I've been very fortunate to have experienced both the online and the offline world of those pairings, of that sort of sommelier expertise. Because even during the pandemic, some organizations were sending particular wines to groups, and then the sommelier would join virtually and walk you through it. And I know it's very different to being there in person and the sense of occasion, but it kind of worked too. I don't think it was as dynamic or as engaging as meeting people in real life, and that sort of people coming together, and you said that cohesion that sort of happens. There's a little bit of magic that happens there. But I must ask you, in your personal life, you must get asked all the time by friends, family, people, when they find out what you do, or what should I be drinking? What's in this season? What's the best thing? What do you think of that? Do you get bombarded with that all the time? And what about your own ability to taste different wines and to learn new information? How does that work for you?
Absolutely. I love the questions, and I know exactly what you mean with regards to the online, how it worked. And this was the great thing. We made it work. It really did have a different feel, a different flavor to it. That being said, I was very honored and very happy to be involved I created Zoom wine tasting, Zoom webinars. I remember being asked by Amazon Web Services to be their sommelier in a precursor to their leadership weekend. So when you have things like that happen, it's great, because it kept me being a part of the corporate community and part of being in people's living rooms without being there, which was nice. As for family and friends and all that, absolutely, I am asked on a daily basis when I mention, in fact, I was with my mom. We had a driver taking us to an appointment of hers, and in the chit chat, it came up that I'm a sommelier, and the woman asked, she's, what are your favorite wines? And I usually will bring it back to, I love all wines equally. It's like trying to ask what my favorite child is out of, 40. I love all wines for different reasons. Champagne is my favorite. And that would be my go-to. And then it gives me an opportunity to ask them, because that's really what people, I think, are wanting to know. When they ask me what my favorite wine is or what the best wine is or anything, they're wanting to be up on the best, the most interesting, or the newest, or anything like that. So I turn it back to them, and I actually ask them questions that I would ask a client who had come to me in a business setting, even though it's just in a day-to-day interaction. And in fact, this particular woman, now I'm sending her information, and I'm in the process of creating a wine text whereby people can do that for a subscription, and they can have my recommendation at any time, either by way of phone or text or on the web. And that way I'm working it out that I never want it to be just a monetary exchange, because then it's not authentic. People are going to ask me for advice. It's like a doctor when, he's out at a party, someone will be like, oh, my back, or this and that. And so I absolutely love offering what the up and coming rosé is for the year or anything like that. I also get a chance. Family and friends have a family and friends discount, of course. And, and with people, it's something that I've realized is day to day. And I'm actually honored and really enjoy when they then become a part of my wine community in what I do for virtual wine concierge.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there, Tereza, because it's not just about the commercial side of it. What comes through is you're really building a community of people, a long sort of standing relationship and friendship. And that I think is really special. And when you were talking there about, during the pandemic and what you did as well, there's a publisher called Tyler Brûlé. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Monocle company.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm very familiar. Yes.
And I'm sure then Switzerland, Chandra Kurt, who is a wine writer and author, etc. And what I love about their podcast is at the start of the podcast, they'll ask Chandra, the guests will give her a scenario while I'm meeting XYZ friends at the weekend, and by the end of the episode, she always has to come up with the choice, the selection, and why she's decided on something. And I think that works particularly well, even though to the listener, there's no physical element to it, but it's a great story that's told throughout that.
That's exactly it. I very much agree. And in fact, I would say the favorite thing I do is choose wine, and when people are asking.
Love that. Well, look, just want to ask you a little bit about, becoming a master of wine, because there aren't that many of them globally. There's a growing number of them, but it takes a lot of effort and energy. And what is the difference between being sort of a certified sommelier and then going for this master of wine accreditation, if that's even the right term? Because they're kind of spread out around the world. But if you looked at each country in particular, there's not a lot of them in each country.
No, you're very right. There's only, I'll have to double check the numbers in terms, because they have new graduation, but Master of Wine, only over 300 in the world. And in fact, the first Master of Wine passed away recently, which, for the Master of Wine community, was a loss in the fact, because there are so few. So with regards to Master of Wine, it's, again, it is out of London in terms that is where it was created. And you will find that the larger of the smallest concentration of Master of Wine are in the UK, or were. The difference between them is the fact, as a certified sommelier, you have gone through WSET, you've gone through your accreditation, and you have you've blind tasted wines, you have written essays on the contrast and comparison of Chablis to Meursault, or New Zealand Pinot Noir to Burgundian Pinot Noir. And you have run the gamut of spirits and fortified wines, the different faults that happen in terms of corked wine or sulfites or like all of that. Then in a way, it's really the Master of Wine is like going from your MBA to your PhD, whereby Master of Wine would be the PhD of the wine industry, because your starting point is that you write a letter and you are asking, your cover letter and your resume are asking to be invited into the Master of Wine. And the first prerequisite is that you have enough global knowledge that you have the basis for starting. And then it's a 4-year program, and you travel more as well. You have to go to Germany, you have to go to London, you need to put in your time and your internship at the wineries, so that you can say, I've pruned here, I've done a stage here. And the level of exams are not only higher, they are then, you have a mentor that's been assigned to you, and that mentor became a Master of Wine. So from that, you have a support system that you might not have really had with your certification of WSET, except your peers. So that once you get to Master of Wine, and when you write your last exam, when you receive your certification, it is not only the pinnacle of one mountain, it then is the valley of the next mountain, because what your career opens up, what the possibilities of your career and what you do internationally opens up completely. And then that's the next mountain for a person to climb.
I love that phrase, the pinnacle of wine mountain. That's wonderful. Well, thank you for explaining that, because, becoming a Master of Wine, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of knowledge, and also, there's a passion that's required, and it's not easy. Not everybody can do it. And, maybe it's an area that people, they may be familiar with sommeliers, but maybe not necessarily Masters of Wine. So thank you for explaining that to our audience and to me.
You're welcome. And just to add to that, it's very true what you said. It's not right for everyone. Every sommelier will not be right for Master of Wine. And the reason I say that is Barb Phillip, one of my mentors, when she brought the Master of Wine course as an overview for us to read through the book and to have an information pamphlet of, these are the steps, this is what it takes. And she said herself, not everyone is meant for this. And there's a reason that there are not only so few, but one has to have not only the passion for wine and the wine industry, one has to have the broadest understanding that, for example, boxed wine is just as important as the Petrus, the absolute unicorn of Vega Sicilia, or the Domaine de Romani-Conti. And that was something that I don't think anyone had expressed to me in my career until I got to that level. And it's not a personal thing on anyone. It's the fact of, in the global economy of the, not just the world, but of life, it's really important to have a well-rounded, critical thinking way of life and understanding, and being able to not only learn that way, but then once you learn it, then you are responsible for becoming a mentor to someone. You are responsible not only for those mentees, you're then responsible for the economy of the wine world. And that is what I absolutely love. And I'm actually really excited about this next few years.
Yeah, and I was going to say that because you kind of likened it to doing the PhD. But
Yes.
it's not just that, is it? It's, you almost become this ambassador for wine internationally around the world. And you mentioned it in the term of opening doors and opportunities. And it's because, you know, there are not many people in that category that it does open up a lot of doors. It does move into lots of other areas. But I love how you've described that in terms of that sort of broad, almost global aspect to wine that you need to bring to it. And it isn't for everybody. So I find that fascinating. Now, how do you keep up to speed with all the trends? What are you reading? What are you searching on the internet? How, you know, are you an audio person? Do you like meeting people? I assume in person, in real life, to gain information too. But what do you do with all these different channels of communication now? Where do you go to learn and to onboard stuff?
I love this question. I love this whole discussion because one of my first mentors, Larry Arnold, had said to me, I would ask him for these pearls of wisdom a few decades ago. You know, what's the best things to do? And he said, taste, 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 read, 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 drink, drink, drink. And he said, and not in that order. And so no matter what level a sommelier or master of wine is at, it's very true in terms to keep up with and to create our worlds. For me, I have exactly what you said, a series. It's almost like 4 to 6 pillars of learning and interacting and all that. So with regards, of course, the online component is necessary. LinkedIn has been, especially through COVID, and even now, traveling isn't easiest for everyone, and as well, time-wise and all of that. So LinkedIn and now LinkedIn Audio has given me an even greater ability that I'm connected globally with not only the winemakers, the wineries themselves. So last year, when Bordeaux was going through their fires and was having a real challenging time, when Chablis the year before, when they had their frost and all that, I was online and I was able to not only talk with them, but see because of their posts and interact with them. So I was kept up in real time with, at the time, Twitter was helpful as well. You know, Instagram. So the Facebook, not so much, because I utilize Facebook more for personal or more local business, local wineries and all of that. But it gave me the ability then to do Zoom conversations with the winemakers to keep up. Someone like Jane Anson, for example, she's in Bordeaux. She just did Bordeaux Premier, and not only her photos, her stories, and she interacts. So I've actually connected with some people who were attendees of one of her classes, one of her tastings. And so I'm really finding this great global community before I go traveling. So then when I'm there, then I get a chance to meet them in person, and I can say, you know, we meet at such and such coffee shop, or we're going to the same tasting together. The other part of it is there is the wine festival. The Vancouver International Wine Festival is here in Vancouver this week. It's one of the largest in North America. So we have Laura Catena from Catena Winery in Argentina here. And that's phenomenal because she is not only an icon, they're an iconic winery. She has become such an iconic and authentic speaker for women in the wine world, for female winemakers, and which of course has a voice of its own. I try not to do gender specific anymore because it's always the best winemaker for the job. But Laura has a special place in everyone's hearts. And in that regard, it's really great when you get a chance to talk with her face to face, because she's at the tasting table that you're going up to. And there's over 1,000 tables that are there. It's that international flavor. And then as well, with regards to keeping up, I do read the Decanter, the Wine Enthusiast, the World of Fine Wine. I am, of course, creating, actually right now, I'm in the process of co-creating an online wine course with a girlfriend of mine. She offers kitchen design, not just offers, she creates kitchen design. And she is doing some kitchen design for a client in Provence while she's here in Vancouver. So her and I are teaming up, and we're going to do some online wine courses that combine how one can create their wine cellar or wine area in their business or home, as well as wine tips for how to store wine, what wines are of the moment, all of that. So that keeps me not just on the forefront. I was taught by a chef that we don't follow trends, we set trends. So I'm looking forward to doing that, because that is what, in each corner of the world, we have some of our greatest people that, it used to be Robert Parker, now it's Lisa Perotti Brown, and there's so many great voices. I could go on and on and on, but the one thing I will say, I had been mentored by people that I really believed in, and when I talked with them, I understood their words, their how they related wine and food. And so I recommend that for anyone, that it's the authentic voice that they relate to.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you for sharing that, because when you were talking, one of my questions I wanted to ask you about was the online elements, because I was thinking about somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk, who a lot of people know, when he started Wine Library TV back in the day. Nobody thought he could ship boxes of wine, and then he ran into a few problems with different states across the US not being able to ship across state lines, etc. But it became very successful. He did it in his own unique style, as only
he did.
But I wanted to ask you, and it's interesting that you're sort of teaming up with somebody now. You've got these kind of courses as well, and so that online element, because there's a real vibrant community online, isn't there, in the space?
There is. In fact, I mean, that's what I love so much about how we met, is through one of the online spaces. And I'm working on not just that with my girlfriend, Allison Kent, who is here in Vancouver, working with you, doing this podcast, for one, is fantastic. And Keith Keller in Melbourne, Australia, and Bez, who's in Atlanta, Georgia, pardon me. We're creating online. In fact, Keith is talking about creating an online spirits course or webinar, and the online concerts. For example, the Coachella paired up with, or actually YouTube signed a contract with Coachella. I believe this is the second year that they've done it, but they've really kind of taken it to a next level, because online, with regards to events and webinars and all of that, can now not only be streamed, but we have platforms like OBV.io, which I'm working with Bez and Keith and Sherry on, that will take it to that next level. So for oneself, I can not only showcase my talents, to all of these people in their living rooms. They have the added benefit of music and art and culture and home design. There's just no limit really to what we can create with this online community, and bringing it into someone's living room that either doesn't really want to do crowds or can't get there for travel, or just didn't find out about it until last minute. I can't think of how many times people have said, oh, I would have loved to go, but I didn't hear about it until the tickets were sold out. So this online form has really opened up just so much more ability for local and global and international events.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you mentioned Keith Keller there. I know Keith and Bez. I think you're referring to Sherry Grant,
Yes,
who is an exquisite pianist.
she is.
And, very, very talented. And it's interesting how that sort of online global community from all corners of the world can come together to create something quite special. So that's very exciting.
It is.
And now you mentioned a few people there, whether it's the people that you're partnering with, the people you just mentioned, or maybe people more directly from your own industry. But there must be people that you admire, or people that you've looked up to, or maybe people that have given you a helping hand along the way. When I ask you that question, what springs to mind for you?
Oh, that it's on the one hand, it is such a global, and I know I use that word a lot, but I always say we vibe with our tribe, and it takes a village to raise either a child, or especially to raise as a solopreneur a company, because it is all of the people along the way. I think it brings to mind when someone is receiving an award for, the Academy Awards, the Globes, whatever, when you're thinking back to all the people you want to thank, it does really start with my mom in that regard. My mom, not only biggest supporter, sometimes biggest challenge, because our family, I would say my family in its entirety, and that includes my grandfather, who was allergic to wine. So all of the years that he was alive, he not only couldn't drink, he didn't. My grandmother did. My grandmother she liked her sherry. Their love of each other and their commitment to one another really, that built a sense of loyalty within me of who I am and the people in my world. So family, absolutely. And when I say my grandfather couldn't drink alcohol, he asked me at one point, well, isn't there another industry you can go into? And I was like, well, just grape juice isn't hiring right now. So it's interesting, because sometimes the greatest challenges, or the people who may have adversarial or opposite sides to what we want to achieve in life, our business and all of that, our passions and our dreams, are the best lessons. And he is one I cherish the most. When it comes to people, other people, the love of my life, who believed in me and supported me when he was together with me, definitely. When you have a partner, when you're in the midst of exams or you have deadlines on your clients, and you're all of a sudden working to achieve something greater than you've ever achieved before, having a partner who truly believes in you and is there for you, and you can vent to, or you can get just a loving, kind word from, an encouragement, it really can be the difference sometimes between being like, whew. And that goes to my friends, my friends became my clients, or my friends became like Alison Kent. She has become a woman who I not only highly admire and value. Her and my community is growing. then it comes down to people like Robert Parker, who's very, very controversial. He is one of the reasons I have the job I have today, because he created the 100-point system. And when you create a system, you then create a community. And in creating a community, you have two sides. So you have the sides who are all about Parkerization of wine and what that's like, and 100 points versus 87 points. And then you have the people who say, oh, it means nothing. And that makes for such great discussion that then creates new things. And he has succeeded, and he has brought other people in. And I will say, strangely enough, because again, there's my mentors, Larry Arnold and Barb Phillip and Mark Shipway, one of my first instructors. There's so many people that it's almost like you actually bring a very good point. When we do our gratitude journals, or when we do our gratitude in a daily or weekly, having a list of people that helped us along the way, in terms, I could do a list of 5 people, and it would be 5 different people every day for 365 days. And I think that will be my new project, because then that is almost a book or a conversation in itself. And I will say my last, and not least at all, I was 12 years old, and a friend of mine noticed something, and my mom took me to the doctor, and it turned out I had scoliosis. And Dr. Stephen Treadwell was my doctor. And I ended up at 15 having surgery at Children's Hospital by way of him. And I had these new CD rods that were out of France that didn't have permits at the time, and had a 6.5-hour surgery at Children's Hospital, 3 years of rehabilitation and everything. And when I was sommelier at Bacchus, which is a Relais and Chateau restaurant, we hosted a Chaîne de Rôtisseurs event, which a Chaîne de Rôtisseurs event is a gastronomic club, and there's different chapters around the world. And Dr. Stephen Treadwell was not only there, he was being honored that particular night. So as the somm who had chosen the wine and was pouring the wine, I got a chance to talk with him and to thank him for him going out of his way to get the rods, because he went and he got the rods from the United States, smuggled them in, I think I can say this now, and did the surgery. And because of him, I have a phenomenal health, whereby I might be in a wheelchair, hunchback, arthritis, I might be very debilitated. So one of my books, one of my legacies, one of my legacies is I always support BC Children's Hospital for what they did for me, because Dr. Treadwell changed my life for the fact of he gave me great health, and I'm stronger and healthier because of it. And as we all know, if we don't have our health, it doesn't matter how much money or how much love of a career we have. If we don't have our health, then everything is much more challenged. So I could go on, but there's that. Thank you for allowing me to actually give back by saying who it is that that I have to be grateful for in my life.
I love it. And look, from a real challenge to a great opportunity when you're back with Dr. Treadwell then after all those years, celebrating. I mean, that must have been a wonderful event.
It was so poignant. And again, that's where the universe and coincidence and or just who would have thought that from surgery at 15 to be able to cheers to him with a glass of wine and say that I have the life that I have now, and I love it so much, and I get to do not only what I love, but I have people that have become sommeliers that I work worked with, they were servers, and they ended up becoming sommeliers because they saw what I did and how much I loved it. So giving back and getting a chance to thank him was, it's one of the pinnacles of my life.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. And, you know, there are some surgeons, I'm sure, who would have said, oh, there's nothing available in this country, and the story would have ended there. But, you know, going out of his way, rightly or wrongly, but it's at the time, I mean, but obviously rightly as we look back through time.
Yes.
But that's wonderful. And what about, you know, we've talked a little bit about advice as we've been discussing things here, but you must have picked up some really good advice along the way, whether it was life related or industry related. But is there advice that you find yourself wanting to share with others, or is there some special advice that you've picked up that you could maybe give us today?
Oh, thank you. I'm not only honored, I love that. I love every breath of life. Love. I've really learned, and I've really been so grateful for the people that have come into my life. It truly is sometimes when the failures have happened or the challenges, the dips in the road, if you can surrender fully to that moment, knowing that it will be okay one way or the other. Not only it will be, that it is okay one way or another, that you get through the other side, and the lessons and the blessings that you've learned are what really create your foundation for that next level. A very dear friend of mine that I worked with when I contracted to TED Talks when TED came from California up to Vancouver, and they actually just had their last conference just last week. And a gentleman that worked in the AV portion of it, he said, we were talking about, you know, it's a contract, and whether it goes well or whether, because so many people start their contract and don't finish it. So many people start their contract, finish it, and are burnt out or go on to a next. And he said, it's time to level up. And that part of that is this radical acceptance of, I wake up, I would say Joe Dispenza, in terms of his viewpoint of, don't let your feet hit the ground until you are immersed in gratitude, in the appreciation of the day to come. And when your feet hit the floor, then you go and you be positive about everything. Everything has this, to me nowadays, everything has this beautiful look and feel and brightness to it, because we are in some of the most challenging, some of the most exciting times. And I don't think there's a person out there that hasn't been touched by the challenges of the last 3 years, by way of losing family or health, or losing careers, jobs, everything. And it's the fact that when we do our best, things sometimes still don't go right. And the acceptance, the radical acceptance of that, is something that it's newer to me, and I'm really embracing it. And it's something that so many people along the way have said to me is, I would say not just we vibe with our tribe, but as well, we lift a gentleman who I worked for, and I'm now coming on as an independent contractor with his company as Rising Tide Consultants. And it's a rising tide lifts all boats, because we each lift each other up. And my last, but one of my favorite, well, not my last, one of my favorite sayings is, what if I fall? And then the answer is, oh, but darling, what if you fly? And that Maya Angelou and some of her poems have definitely over time been really uplifting and honest. And I know everybody has certain people that they go to, Rumi or philosophers or anything like that. But, you know, again, it's what if I fail? And it's like, darling, but what if you fly? So it's being able to dream and hope and know that we do have great things coming for us and with us, and that the changes, we are going to be okay, and we're going to create a better world.
Well, thank you. There's some great observations and some great advice wrapped up there. That's wonderful. And look, as we sort of head towards the end of our time here today, I wanted to ask just a couple of quick things. One is, what's on the horizon? What are you hoping to achieve over the next 12 months? And secondly, if people want to reach out and get in touch with you about all the wonderful things that we've spoken about today, where's the best place to send people to?
Thank you so much. It's a very exciting world out there. It's fast paced. And when I say out there, it's, you know, online and in person. So for me, thank you for this time, for one, because I am rebuilding my company with regards to the e-commerce and the online portion. I'm so used to being in person, and I love what I do locally. So in Vancouver and Toronto, and Montreal, but even in provinces between there, I am looking forward to traveling and being contracted for Guest Sommelier, for corporate, for private events, so that I can choose wine, pour wine, talk about wine and food insecurity, and I call it actually food quality, food security, because I like to change the narrative. So looking towards the next 12 months, it is not just rebuilding my in-person events. I welcome new clients, as well as I am so appreciative of my clients and guests and customers that have been loyal to me. So building that community by way of not only in person, but also I'm rebuilding. And so I'm building my website and rebuilding the ability. I am available with Zoom, and I'm looking with regards to Sherry Grant and Keith Keller and Bez of creating online webinars, online events that people can come to, which I think is, I'm so excited about that aspect of it. Jennifer, I'm just trying to think of her last name. She's really involved. This whole online community that I'm learning about, expanding that so that my travel then actually goes over to Europe again, because I miss my European friends. I miss my New Zealand and my Australian friends. So the forecast for the next 12 months for me is, while I'm building and creating this online community presence, family tribe that is people that I collaborate with, also clients and guests, then getting back to going to the wineries. And I have a really special project that I'm working on that I'm looking forward to bringing to the world in about 3 or 4 months. So I hope people stay tuned for that. And for people who want to find out more information, talk with me, hire me, however it is, right now, LinkedIn, Tereza Roux, via LinkedIn, Virtual Wine Concierge is, and I am on Twitter with regards, I'm very responsive on both of those. I have my website just getting set up, and that will be virtualwineconcierge.com. So it's all a very exciting time.
Sounds very exciting. It sounds like you've got a very exciting 12 months ahead. Was it Jennifer Navarrete?
Yes, yes.
That was a guess, but I kind of know Jennifer's connected to some of the other people. She's a podcaster in her own rights too, and Jennifer's.
She's
I was just
fantastic.
thinking when you said Jennifer, and I said I know a Jennifer that would definitely be interested in that space. So that was just a.
Yes.
I just thought I'd
she actually invested it was started off as Sage Events in terms the platform itself is obv.io, and it's a platform that the likes of Tony Robbins and that have utilized, whereby it brings an entire online concert to your living room, to your home, and the opportunities for it are phenomenal. So Jennifer has she's created an event that if anyone goes to her LinkedIn or her Twitter, then they can sign up. I've signed up for it because I'm really excited for her this will be the first one she's doing. And then I will be looking to create those myself as well.
Well, look, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing the information and also where people can reach out and connect with you. I wish you continued success on your journey up Wine Mountain and beyond. Thank you to everybody who's been watching or listening to this episode around the world. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do all the things I need to do to help support the podcast. And I hope that people will join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers. And the only thing left for me to do is to say thank you. Thank you so much indeed, Tereza, for being with me today. It's been a wonderful episode. I've really enjoyed our discussion, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Simon. And I just very much appreciate your time and what you're doing and being a part of all of this. There are incredible people out there. So thank you very much.